An immigrant's selfless deed for an old man led to a life-changing citizenship gift that neither of them could have imagined on that bitter December morning. The day had dawned gray and unforgiving, much like the past 3 years of Rafael Mendoza's life in America. A constant uphill battle against invisibility. Rafael pulled his thin jacket tighter around his shoulders as he swept the parking lot outside Gino's grocery, the only place that would hire him without asking too many questions. The cold bit through the worn fabric, a harsh reminder of how far he was from the warmth of his hometown in Guatemala. His fingers, red and chapped, gripped the broom handle with the determination that had kept him going since arriving in this strange land, a place that had yet to feel like home. "Morning, Rafa." Mr. Gino's voice carried across the empty lot, the older Italian man unlocking the front door of his modest grocery store. "Gonna be a cold one today." "Yes, sir," Rafael replied, the words still feeling awkward on his tongue despite years of practice. English remained a puzzle with too many missing pieces. 3 years, 2 months, and 14 days since he'd crossed the border, carrying nothing but a backpack and the promise he'd made to his dying mother, that he would build a better life. Some days like today, that promise felt impossibly heavy. Rafael worked methodically, clearing the sidewalk of fallen leaves and scattered debris. The repetitive motion was soothing, allowing his mind to wander to his tiny apartment, where a stack of immigration paperwork sat on his makeshift table. Applications, forms, and legal notices, all written in the bewildering language of bureaucracy that made his limited English seem even more inadequate. His temporary protected status was set to expire in 3 months, and the renewal process was a labyrinth he couldn't navigate alone. But legal help cost money he didn't have. He was so absorbed in his thoughts that he almost missed the old man struggling across the parking lot. The stranger moved with painful slowness, hunched against the cold, each step appearing to require monumental effort. He was tall and gaunt, with a shock of white hair visible beneath a worn baseball cap. Something about his determined shuffle reminded Rafael of his grandfather. Rafael watched as the old man's foot caught on an uneven patch of asphalt. The world seemed to slow as the elderly figure began to fall, arms flailing outward. Without thinking, Rafael dropped his broom and sprinted across the lot. He caught the old man just before he hit the ground, his arms straining with the unexpected weight. Up close, Rafael could see the man's face, weathered like old leather, deep lines etched around pale blue eyes that now widened with surprise. "Steady there," Rafael said, the words coming out in Spanish before he could catch himself. "Está bien, señor. I mean, are you okay?" The old man's breath came in shallow gasps, forming small clouds in the frigid air. "Thank you, son." His voice was a gravelly whisper. "These old legs aren't what they used to be." Rafael helped him stand upright, noticing how the man's coat hung loosely on his frame, as if he'd recently lost weight. "You want to sit? I can bring chair." The old man shook his head. "Just need to get my groceries. My name's Walter, by the way. Walter Garrison. Rafael Mendoza." He hesitated, then added, "I can help you shop." A flash of something, pride perhaps, crossed Walter's face. "I don't need charity." Rafael recognized that look. He'd worn it himself too many times. "Not charity, senor. Just some kindness." He picked up his broom. "Let me tell my boss first." "Mr." Gino waved him off with surprising ease. "Take your time, Rafa. Not busy yet." Inside the store, Rafael pushed the cart while Walter leaned heavily on it, directing him through the aisles. The old man moved with deliberate slowness, each step measured and careful. "You're not from here," Walter observed as Rafael reached for a can of soup on a high shelf. Rafael tensed slightly, the habitual caution of someone living in the shadows. "No, Guatemala." "How long?" 3 years. Walter nodded, his eyes evaluating. "Your English is coming along." "Not fast enough," Rafael admitted, surprising himself with his candor. "Took my wife 5 years to learn proper English after she came from Poland," Walter said, a smile softening his face. "Used to mix up her idioms something terrible. Once told my mother she was happy as a clown instead of happy as a clam." The unexpected image made Rafael smile. "Where is your wife now?" Walter's face clouded. "Cancer took her 2 years ago." The simple statement hung in the air between them, heavy with unspoken grief. Rafael recognized the look in Walter's eyes. It was the same emptiness he'd seen in his own reflection after his mother passed. "Lo siento," Rafael said softly. "I am sorry." They finished shopping in companionable silence. At the register, Rafael noticed Walter's hands trembling as he counted out bills from a worn leather wallet. The old man was $2 short for his modest purchases. Without hesitation, Raphael slipped the cashier the difference from his own pocket. It was money he couldn't spare, part of what he'd been saving for his immigration paperwork, but the decision felt right. Outside, Raphael insisted on carrying the groceries to Walter's car, an ancient Buick with faded blue paint. As he loaded the bags into the trunk, Walter studied him with those penetrating blue eyes. "Where do you live, Raphael?" Raphael pointed vaguely east. "Apartment? 20 minutes walking." Walter frowned. "In this cold? Get in. I'll drive you." The drive was short but revealing. Walter was a retired high school history teacher. He'd taught for 42 years at the local high school and still tutored occasionally to keep the mind sharp. His house, when they pulled up to it, was a modest one-story with peeling white paint and neglected flower beds. "Would you like to come in for coffee?" Walter asked, the invitation clearly surprising them both. Raphael checked his watch. He wasn't due back at the store for another 30 minutes. "Yes, thank you." The inside of Walter's home told the story of a life well-lived, but now neglected. Photos lined the walls. Walter with a petite woman with kind eyes, presumably his late wife. Walter in younger days standing proudly in a classroom. Walter holding a fishing rod beside a sparkling lake. But dust had settled on the frames and dishes were piled in the sink. The home of a man who had started to give up. Walter put on coffee, his movements slow but methodical. "So what brought you to America, Raphael?" The question was asked without judgment, just genuine curiosity. Perhaps that's why Raphael found himself answering honestly. "My mother was sick. No good doctors in our village. We saved for years, but..." He stared into his coffee cup. "Too late for her, but she made me promise to come here anyway. For a better life." Walter nodded, saying nothing, just listening. It was the first time someone had truly listened to Raphael's story since he'd arrived in America. "And have you found it? This better life?" Raphael thought of his tiny apartment, the constant fear of deportation, the struggle to make ends meet. But he also thought of the public library where he taught himself English, the community garden where an elderly Mexican woman had shown him which plants would grow in this foreign soil, the small kindnesses of strangers. "I am trying," he said finally. "Every day I try." Walter's eyes crinkled. "That's all any of us can do." As Raphael rose to leave, Walter seemed reluctant to end their conversation. "I could use some help around the house," he said suddenly. "Yard work, minor repairs. Things these old bones can't manage anymore." "I'd pay you, of course." Raphael knew it was probably charity disguised as employment, but he needed the money. And something about Walter's dignified loneliness resonated with him. "Yes, I can help. Sundays I am free all day." That first Sunday turned into a weekly ritual. Raphael would arrive early, often finding Walter already awake, coffee brewing. They would work together on whatever project Walter had identified. Cleaning gutters, repairing cabinet hinges, raking leaves. Walter insisted on working alongside Raphael despite his age, and Raphael learned to slow his pace, to find value in the deliberate, unhurried approach of his elderly companion. They fell into a comfortable pattern. Walter would tell stories of his teaching days or of his life with Helena, his Polish wife. Raphael would share memories of Guatemala, the vibrant markets, the mountain views, his mother's cooking. Sometimes they worked in companionable silence, the quiet punctuated only by the sounds of their labor. One Sunday in January, Raphael arrived to find Walter in uncharacteristic distress. The old man's hands shook more than usual as he poured coffee, spilling some onto the counter. "What is wrong, mister?" "Walter?" Raphael had taken to adding the honorific despite Walter's protests. Walter sank heavily into a kitchen chair. "Property taxes went up again. And the furnace needs replacing." He gestured vaguely around the house. "Too much for one old man to handle. The bank's been calling about a reverse mortgage, but..." He trailed off, staring at his trembling hands. Raphael felt a familiar knot of worry. His own financial situation wasn't much better. His immigration paperwork fees were mounting, and his temporary status would expire soon. The lawyer he'd finally consulted had quoted a figure that made his stomach sink. "Maybe I can help with furnace," Raphael offered. "I fixed heating systems back home." Walter's expression softened. "It's not just the furnace, son. It's everything. This house is too big for just me now. But it's all I have left of Helena. We built our life here." The pain in Walter's voice was raw, a grief still fresh despite the passage of time. Raphael recognized it because he carried a similar wound. The ache of losing not just a loved one, but the life they represented. "Show me furnace," Raphael said firmly. "Then we make plan." The furnace was indeed in poor shape, but not beyond repair. Raphael spent the day dismantling it, cleaning parts, and reassembling what he could. By evening, it was running more efficiently, though Raphael knew it was only a temporary fix. As February turned to March, Raphael noticed Walter's health declining. The old man moved more slowly, ate less, and tired more easily. One Sunday, Raphael arrived to find Walter still in bed, feverish and disoriented. Without hesitation, Raphael called an ambulance. At the hospital, he paced the waiting room, worry gnawing at his insides. When the doctor finally emerged, her expression was grave. "Are you family?" she asked. Raphael hesitated. "No, friend." She looked skeptical but continued. "Mr. Naresh, Garrison is suffering from pneumonia, complicated by underlying heart issues. We need to keep him for observation. Does he have any family we can contact?" Raphael thought of the photos in Walter's house, the stories the old man had shared. No family. His wife died. No children. The doctor made a note on her clipboard. "Well, he's asking for you." Walter looked small and fragile against the white hospital sheets, his skin nearly as pale. An oxygen tube ran beneath his nose and monitors beeped steadily beside the bed. "Raphael," he wheezed, attempting a smile. "Sorry about our Sunday project." Raphael swallowed the lump in his throat. "We do next week. You rest now." Walter's eyes drifted closed. "The house key is in my coat pocket. Would you check on things? Make sure the pipes don't freeze?" "Of course, Mr. Walter, I take care of everything." Over the next week, Raphael divided his time between work, his own apartment, and Walter's house. He checked the furnace daily, collected the mail, and kept the sidewalks clear of snow. He also began to notice things he'd overlooked before. Past due bills stacked on the counter, prescription bottles nearly empty, a refrigerator with little food. Walter's life was unraveling in ways that went beyond his health. At the hospital, Raphael brought small comforts. Walter's favorite cardigan, books from his shelves, homemade soup that reminded Raphael of what his mother used to make when he was ill. He would sit for hours beside Walter's bed, sometimes reading aloud from the history books the old man loved, other times just keeping silent vigil. The nurses began to recognize him, offering small smiles of acknowledgement. One of them, a kind-faced woman named Irene, pulled him aside one evening. "It's good what you're doing," she said. "Many of our elderly patients have no visitors at all." Raphael shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. "He is a good man." Irene studied him thoughtfully. "You know, the hospital has a patient advocacy program for people without family support. Maybe you could inquire about it for Mr. Garrison?" The program, Raphael discovered, provided assistance with medical decisions, billing issues, and transition planning for elderly patients. He filled out the paperwork immediately, listing himself as Walter's emergency contact without a second thought. When Walter was finally discharged 2 weeks later, he was noticeably weaker. The doctor prescribed rest, medication, and follow-up appointments. Raphael listened carefully to the instructions, making mental notes. "I can't ask you to take care of an old man." Walter protested weakly as Raphael helped him into the car. "You did not ask," Raphael replied simply. "I offer." The next few weeks established a new routine. Raphael would finish his shift at the grocery store, then head to Walter's house. He'd prepare a simple dinner, ensure Walter took his medication, and sometimes stay overnight on the couch if the old man seemed particularly frail. Mr. Gino, seeing Raphael's exhaustion, unexpectedly offered him more flexible hours. "Family is important," the Italian grocer said. Though Raphael had never mentioned Walter to him, "You take care of your old friend. The store will be here." The kindness brought tears to Raphael's eyes that he quickly blinked away. One evening in April, as spring began to soften the harsh edges of winter, Raphael was sorting through Walter's mail when he found another notice from the bank. The threat of foreclosure was no longer hypothetical, but imminent. He placed the letter on the kitchen table, unsure how to broach the subject with Walter, who was dozing in his recliner. The old man's finances were in worse shape than Raphael had imagined. Social Security and a modest pension weren't covering the mounting medical bills, property taxes, and home maintenance costs. And Raphael's own situation was equally precarious. His temporary protected status would expire in 3 weeks. The immigration lawyer had filed for an extension, but with no guarantee of approval. The thought of being forced to leave, to abandon Walter when the old man needed him most, was unbearable. That night, after ensuring Walter was comfortable in bed, Raphael sat at the kitchen table, head in his hands. The weight of their combined circumstances pressed down on him like a physical force. He was so absorbed in his worry that he didn't hear Walter's shuffling approach. "Can't sleep either." The old man eased himself into a chair opposite Raphael, his breathing still labored from the short walk from the bedroom. Raphael straightened, trying to hide his distress. Just thinking. Walter's gaze fell on the bank notice. His shoulders slumped slightly, but he didn't seem surprised. Ah, that. Mr. Walter, It's all right, son. I've known for a while now. Walter's weathered hand reached across the table, resting lightly on the paper. This house has too many memories anyway. Maybe it's time to let go. The resignation in Walter's voice sparked something in Raphael, a determination he hadn't felt since those first desperate days in America. No, he said firmly. We will find way. Walter's pale eyes studied him with something like wonder. Why do you care so much, Raphael? About an old man you barely know? The question caught Raphael off guard. Why did he care? Because Walter reminded him of his grandfather? Because helping the old man gave purpose to his uncertain existence? Because in Walter's quiet dignity, he saw a reflection of his own struggles? Because, Raphael said slowly, finding the words as he spoke, in Guatemala, we know that wealth is not in bank. It is in connections between people, in how we care for each other. He met Walter's gaze steadily. You are my American family now. Walter's eyes glistened. And you are mine, son. The simple exchange marked a turning point. The next day, Raphael approached Mr. Gino with a proposal. The grocer listened thoughtfully as Raphael explained Walter's situation and his own immigration challenges. So you're saying the old professor needs a roommate and you need a place to stay? Mr. Gino summarized, his expression unreadable. Yes, sir. I pay rent to him, help with house. He has company. Raphael held his breath, hoping his employer wouldn't judge him for the arrangement. To his surprise, Mr. Gino smiled broadly. Sounds like good business to me. And I might know someone who can help with your immigration situation. He scribbled a name on a piece of paper. My nephew, he's an immigration attorney. Tell him Uncle Gino sent you. The nephew, Marco Gianelli, was a sharp-featured man with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. He reviewed Raphael's case in his small office downtown, asking pointed questions about Raphael's employment history, criminal record, none, and ties to the community. Your TPS extension is straightforward enough, Marco said, shuffling papers. But have you considered applying for permanent residency? There are humanitarian provisions that might apply in your case. Raphael shook his head. Too expensive. And who would sponsor? Marco tapped his pen against the desk thoughtfully. Let me look into some options. In the meantime, document everything you're doing for Mr. Garrison. It strengthens your case to show community ties. With Marco working on his immigration status and the rent arrangement helping Walter's financial situation, Raphael felt a cautious hope begin to bloom. He moved his few possessions into Walter's spare bedroom, formerly a home office filled with books and papers that they carefully relocated to the living room shelves. Living together full-time revealed new dimensions to both men. Raphael discovered that Walter sang opera in the shower, badly but enthusiastically. Walter learned that Raphael was a meticulous cook who could transform simple ingredients into flavorful meals. They developed small rituals. Coffee on the porch in the morning, chess games in the evening, Walter always won, and old movies on Sunday afternoons. Helena would have liked you, Walter remarked one evening as they washed dishes side by side. She always said I needed someone to keep me honest. Raphael smiled, passing a plate to Walter for drying. My mother would have liked you too. She respected educated men. Tell me about her, Walter said softly. And so Raphael did. About his mother's strength as a single parent after his father abandoned them, her determination to see Raphael educated despite their poverty, her unfailing optimism even as illness ravaged her body. As he spoke, he realized it was the first time he'd shared these stories since her death. The memories, once too painful to revisit, now brought a bittersweet comfort. Walter listened with the same attentiveness he'd shown from their first meeting, asking thoughtful questions and offering genuine sympathy. When Raphael finally fell silent, Walter placed a hand on his shoulder. She would be proud of the man you've become, he said simply. Summer arrived with unexpected opportunities. Walter's former colleagues at the high school, learning of his situation through the efficient small-town grapevine, organized a series of fundraising events. A car wash, a bake sale, and a community yard sale raised enough to cover Walter's property taxes and some of his medical bills. Meanwhile, Raphael's immigration case progressed slowly but steadily. Marco, true to his word, explored every possible avenue, eventually focusing on a humanitarian visa based on the essential care Raphael provided to Walter. It's not a guarantee, Marco cautioned during one of their meetings. But Mr. Garrison's declining health and your role as his primary caregiver create a compelling case. Raphael nodded, trying to temper his hope with realism. How much longer for decision? These things take time. But your extended TPS should keep you protected while we wait. Time, however, was something Walter had in increasingly short supply. By late summer, his health had deteriorated further. The heart condition the hospital had identified was progressing, requiring more medications and frequent doctor visits. Raphael took him to every appointment, carefully noting instructions and managing the growing collection of prescription bottles. On Walter's 78th birthday in August, Raphael organized a small gathering at the house. Mr. Gino came, bringing a homemade tiramisu. Several of Walter's former teaching colleagues attended, as did some neighbors and Irene from the hospital. Walter, seated in his favorite armchair, seemed to draw energy from the company, his eyes brighter than they had been in weeks. As the guests mingled in the living room, Walter beckoned Raphael closer. "I want to show you something," he said quietly, pressing a small key into Raphael's palm. "In my desk, bottom drawer." "There's a folder you should see." After the party, when the house was quiet again and Walter had gone to bed, Raphael used the key to open the locked drawer. Inside was a worn leather folder containing legal documents. Walter's will, power of attorney forms, healthcare directives. All of them recently updated, and all naming Raphael as the primary agent. Raphael sat heavily in the desk chair, the documents trembling in his hands. The trust implicit in these papers overwhelmed him. Walter had made him an undocumented immigrant with an uncertain future, the person responsible for his final wishes and his estate. The next morning, Raphael approached Walter as the old man sipped his coffee on the porch. "You should choose someone else," Raphael said without preamble, placing the folder between them. "Someone who is citizen, someone who will not have problems." Walter set down his cup. "There is no one else I trust more. But my situation is temporary," Walter finished firmly. "Marco is optimistic about your case, isn't he?" Raphael nodded reluctantly. "But still, this is too much responsibility." Walter's gaze was steady. "You've already taken responsibility, son. The papers just make it official." He reached for the folder, opening it to reveal an additional document Raphael hadn't noticed. "And this is the next step." It was a deed transfer form, partially completed. "Walter's house." "No," Raphael said immediately, standing up. "I cannot accept." "Sit down," Walter said, with a flash of the authority that must have served him well in the classroom. Surprisingly, Raphael complied. "Listen to me carefully," Walter continued. "I'm not giving you charity. I'm making a practical decision. This house will need to be sold eventually to cover my medical expenses and any end-of-life care. As my power of attorney, you'll be responsible for that process. The deed transfer simplifies things legally." Raphael shook his head, still resistant. "People will think I take advantage of sick old man." "Let them think what they want." Walter dismissed the concern with a wave. "We know the truth." The truth was complicated. Over the past months, their relationship had evolved from a chance encounter to a deep bond that defied simple categorization. They were not quite father and son, not exactly friends, but family nonetheless. Chosen family, forged through mutual need and genuine affection. As autumn painted the trees in fiery hues, Walter's condition worsened. He was hospitalized twice for heart-related complications, each stay longer than the last. During the second hospitalization, a cardiac specialist delivered sobering news. Walter's heart was failing. Without major intervention, surgery that he might not survive, his prognosis was measured in months, not years. "What do you want to do?" Raphael asked as they drove home from the hospital, the question heavy between them. Walter gazed out the window at the familiar streets of the town where he'd spent his entire adult life. "I want to go home," he said simply, "and stay there as long as I can." They established a new normal. A home health nurse visited 3 times a week. Raphael worked fewer hours at the grocery store, compensating by taking on remote translation work that Mr. Gino's nephew had connected him with. Their days developed a gentle rhythm dictated by Walter's energy levels and medication schedule. In October, Marco called with unexpected news. Raphael's humanitarian visa application had been expedited due to Walter's declining health. An interview was scheduled for the following week. The day of the interview, Walter insisted on accompanying Raphael despite his weakness. "They need to see who they're keeping you here for," he declared, allowing Raphael to help him into his best sweater and slacks. At the immigration office, they waited nervously in hard plastic chairs. When Raphael's name was called, Walter squeezed his hand. "Remember, son, you belong here now." The interviewing officer was a stern-faced woman with reading glasses perched on her nose. She reviewed Raphael's file methodically, occasionally glancing up to study him. "You entered the country without proper documentation," she stated, her tone neutral. "Yes, ma'am," Raphael admitted. "My mother was very sick. I needed to send money for her treatments." She made a note. "And your relationship with Mr. Garrison began how long ago?" "Almost 1 year now." "And you live in his home and provide care for him?" "Yes. He has heart condition. No family." The officer turned her attention to Walter, who sat straight back despite his fatigue. "Mr. Garrison, are you aware that you're being used as the basis for a humanitarian visa application?" Walter's pale eyes flashed. "I'm aware that without Rafael Mendoza, I would likely be in a nursing home or dead. I'm aware that he has sacrificed his own interests repeatedly to ensure my welfare. And I'm aware that this country would be fortunate to count him among its legal residents." The officer's expression remained impassive, but something in her eyes softened slightly. "I see." She turned back to Raphael. "We'll need to verify the medical claims and conduct a home visit. But given the circumstances, we're expediting the process." As they left the office, Walter's strength failed him. Raphael supported him to the car, alarmed by the old man's pallor and labored breathing. "Hospital," Raphael decided, changing their direction. Walter didn't protest, which scared Raphael more than anything else. The following weeks passed in a blur of hospital rooms, medical consultations, and paperwork. Walter was diagnosed with pneumonia again, his weakened heart struggling to fight the infection. Raphael barely left his side, sleeping in an uncomfortable chair, and returning home only to shower and change clothes. Marco visited them in the hospital, bringing news that the immigration officer had conducted her home visit and found everything in order. The humanitarian visa was provisionally approved, pending final review. "That's wonderful," Walter whispered from his hospital bed, his voice thin but his smile genuine. "I told you it would work out." But Raphael found it hard to celebrate as he watched the monitors tracking Walter's declining vital signs. What good was legal status if he lost the person who had come to mean so much to him? December arrived, bringing with it the anniversary of their first meeting. 1 year since Raphael had caught Walter as he stumbled in the grocery store parking lot. 1 year that had transformed both their lives in ways neither could have imagined. Walter came home from the hospital one final time, now with hospice care. The medical equipment that filled his bedroom seemed out of place in the cozy house. But Raphael was grateful to have him home, rather than in the sterile hospital environment. On a snowy evening in mid-December, Walter asked Raphael to bring him the old photo albums from the hall closet. Together, they paged through images of Walter's life, his wedding to Helena, their travels, his years in the classroom. "You would have liked teaching," Walter observed, watching Raphael carefully handle the photos. "You have the patience for it." Raphael smiled. "Maybe someday." Walter closed the album, his movements deliberate. "I have something for you." In my bedside drawer, Raphael retrieved a sealed envelope, raising an eyebrow questioningly. "Open it," Walter urged. Inside was a letter from the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services. Raphael's humanitarian visa had been approved, with a path to permanent residency clearly outlined. "How did you get this?" Raphael asked, stunned. The letter was dated for delivery the following week. Walter's eyes twinkled. "Marco may have pulled some strings to get an advance copy. Consider it an early Christmas present." Raphael read the letter 3 times, his vision blurring with tears. Legal status. The right to work openly, to drive without fear, to build a future without looking over his shoulder. The dream that had seemed impossible for so long. "I don't know how to thank you," he said finally, his voice thick with emotion. Walter reached for his hand. "Live well. That's all the thanks I need." 3 days later, Walter Garrison passed away peacefully in his sleep, Raphael dozing in the chair beside his bed. The hospice nurse who came that morning found Raphael still holding the old man's hand, reluctant to let go even after she gently confirmed what he already knew. The funeral was held at the high school auditorium, the only venue large enough to accommodate everyone who came to pay respects. Former students, colleagues, neighbors, all with stories about how Walter had touched their lives. Raphael listened in wonder as person after person spoke of Walter's kindness, his dedication to teaching, his quiet generosity. When it was Raphael's turn to speak, he approached the podium with trepidation. Public speaking had never been his strength, and grief made his limited English seem even more inadequate. But he had promised Walter he would do this. 1 year ago, he began haltingly. "I meet Mr. Walter in parking lot. He was falling. I catch him." Raphael paused, gathering his thoughts. "But truth is, he catch me too. I was falling in different way. Losing hope, losing faith in American dream." The audience was silent, attentive. Mr. Walter teach me many things. Chamber, chess, history. But most important, he teach me that family is not only blood. Family is who we choose, who we care for. Raphael's voice strengthened as he continued. He chose me as his family. And now I promise to honor his memory by living the life he helped make possible. After the service, many people approached Raphael, offering condolences and sharing more stories about Walter. Mr. Gino enveloped him in a bear hug. Marco assured him that the house transfer was proceeding smoothly. Irene from the hospital pressed a casserole into his hands. In the days that followed, Raphael moved through his grief in small steps. He watered Walter's houseplants. He organized the bookshelves. He sat in Walter's favorite chair and read from the history books they had shared. The letter from Immigration Services arrived officially, just as Walter had promised. Raphael placed it carefully in the folder with Walter's will and other important documents. His legal status was secure, but the future still felt uncertain without Walter's steadying presence. One morning in January, as Raphael sipped coffee on the porch despite the cold, another habit he'd adopted from Walter, the mail carrier delivered a package. It was addressed to Raphael in Walter's distinctive handwriting. Inside was a leather-bound journal and a letter dated 3 weeks before Walter's death. Dear Raphael, it began. If you're reading this, I've moved on to whatever comes next. Don't waste too much time grieving. There's living to be done. Raphael smiled through his tears, hearing Walter's voice clearly in the words. The journal is blank because your story is still being written. Fill it with your experiences, your thoughts, your dreams. Someday, share it with someone who needs to hear it, just as you needed to hear mine. The letter continued, outlining practical matters. The house was indeed Raphael's, along with Walter's modest savings after medical bills were settled. But there was a request. Use some of it for your education. You mentioned teaching someday. Make that someday soon. In the spring, Raphael enrolled in community college courses in education, attending evening classes after his shifts at the grocery store. The house felt emptier without Walter, but he found himself talking to the old man anyway, sharing stories about his classes, asking questions about teaching techniques, imagining Walter's thoughtful responses. He kept the promise he'd made at the funeral, honoring Walter's memory by embracing the opportunities now available to him. He volunteered at the local literacy center, teaching English to recent immigrants. He maintained Walter's connections in the community, hosting occasional gatherings for the old man's former colleagues. And on Sunday afternoons, he still watched the old movies they had enjoyed together. 2 years after Walter's passing, Raphael received his permanent residency card, the coveted green card that represented security and belonging. The same week, he completed his associate degree in education, with plans to continue toward a bachelor's degree. On a December morning, much like the one when they first met, Raphael stood in the grocery store parking lot where it all began. The cold air bit at his cheeks, but his jacket was warmer now, his gloves thick enough to keep the chill at bay. Mr. Gino emerged from the store, waving a greeting. Morning, Rafa. Gonna be a cold one today. Yes, it is, Raphael replied, his English now fluent, though still accented. As he walked toward the store entrance, he noticed an elderly woman struggling with her shopping bags, her footing uncertain on the icy pavement. Without hesitation, Raphael changed direction. Let me help you with those, he offered, taking the heavier bags from her startled hands. Oh, thank you, she said, relief evident in her voice. These old bones aren't what they used to be. Raphael smiled, remembering similar words spoken 3 years earlier. I understand, he said. Sometimes we all need a little help. As he assisted the woman to her car, Raphael felt a familiar presence, as if Walter were watching with approval. One small act of kindness had changed the course of both their lives, creating a legacy that continued beyond either of them. An immigrant's selfless deed for an old man had indeed led to a life-changing citizenship gift. But the true gift, Raphael now understood, had been the connection itself, the family they had formed across boundaries of age, culture, and circumstance. A connection that had taught him the most important lesson of all, that home wasn't a place or a legal status, but the people who made you feel that you belonged.